Welcome to Moments, the podcast, where we have conversations that matter. Hi, everyone. My name is Vasia Makris, your host and founder of Moments, a creative agency bridging art, culture, and technology. Joined by my amazing co-host, HardArt, each week we host a live X space deep diving into hot topics that are shaping the Web3 ecosystem.
GM. What's going on, everyone? I'm super excited to be back for another episode. Thanks, Milton, for DJing us in. How are you? We'll start with you. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to get this conversation started. Our conversation last week was teetering on this one, so I know everybody's chomping at the bit to talk marketplaces today. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So as we kind of wait for everyone to kind of fill out the room and we're kicking it off, let's just start with some housekeeping in case people are new and haven't tuned in yet. Milton and I host these spaces every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, sort of slowly launching and kicking off Moments, the podcast, which essentially are just weekly Twitter spaces focused on important conversations we think we need to be having as a community. Milton and I typically pick one tweet that kind of got a lot of engagement, went viral for the previous week. This week was a little different because it was a much larger conversation. There was a couple of tweets and various guests that we're going to bring in for today's conversation. But the whole concept is essentially to record these weekly spaces, and then eventually we're going to be uploading all of them to platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and all the others, just so that these conversations don't get lost in the Twitterverse, and we have them as essentially like an archive of conversations that we think are necessary to improve as a community and as a space. And this is definitely a long overdue conversation. So I'm excited to kick us off. Obviously, from the title, the episode 5, the Mega Overdue Marketplace Chat, in case people live under a rock, in case you spent too much time touching grass last week and you didn't have a chance to hear about Foundation and the pivot that they made, I do want to just give Milton the mic for a second to give us a super brief recap so that people know why we chose to have this discussion today. So Milton, right back to you, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to take a note out of Fungible's book because I think he was an excellent diplomat last week when he hosted a space after we saw Foundation change their Instagram over to Rodeo. So it was essentially a rebrand, though I would note that Foundation, the marketplace, is still up and running and it looks like normal. So if you go to the Foundation homepage, you're going to see collections and exhibitions happening as normal. However, if you do go to the Instagram, you're going to see where that's rebranded to rodeo.club. And the main reason behind that, Kayvon mentioned, was that Instagram traditionally has not been a great onboarding mechanism to get conversion from people who engage with the social network to actually become collectors on the platform. So in a nutshell, that's what took place. And there was a lot of conversation around that this week and last week. So we want to touch on that, but we want to touch on marketplaces as a whole. And of course, we want to keep it respectful. We'll touch on that in just a moment, but this is definitely not a place to bash, but a place to have a healthy conversation, maybe some constructive criticism, and where we see marketplaces headed in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Milton, for mentioning that. And I just want to reemphasize it. All of the spaces that we have are really about just opening up the dialogue and having a positive, safe space where people feel comfortable to express their opinions. Trust me, I like it when people disagree with me. I want to get your take and I want to hear you out. But I just want to emphasize we're not targeting anybody. Foundation kind of just triggered the entire, I think, community having a larger conversation about marketplaces. So Milton and I spent a lot of time this week going through a bunch of different tweets, reading out different threads, listening to different spaces, and it was really interesting seeing, I think, just the overarching, there was a couple of themes that I think are important that we want to touch on today. And so some of the guests that were invited were because they were tweeting, they were participating in these conversations publicly, and they also are just from a different, diverse perspectives and opinions. So we have some artists up here, some people representing marketplaces, a couple of galleries and curators, but I also want to encourage people listening in the audience. You're more than welcome throughout the conversation to request. We're going to be bringing people on stage. And if you're in a position where maybe you can speak, feel free to drop any questions or comments on the thread. I'm going to be going through that throughout the space as well. So everyone is welcome to essentially join the conversation. And I think the first step is to introduce some of our guests. So I'm going to just hand the mic around. I'll let everyone briefly introduce themselves, and then we can kind of kick it off to the first question that I have for everyone. So, GM Trevor Jones, I think we can maybe start with you. I love that beautiful PFP of yours. We'll give you the mic. How are you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. Just yeah, usual, hanging out, working in the office, getting things ready for organizing with the Castle Party, looking at different entertainers, and yeah, lots of always stuff between myself and Martin, who's working away on all that. But I thought I'd take a wee break and have a chat with you guys. So yeah, looking forward to it. I'm not sure if you wanted to introduce me to introduce myself. I'm an artist. There you go.
Trevor, thanks for taking the time to join. Not just an artist, actually. I was reading through Roger Dickerman's article this morning, and he gave a bit more of a deep down of the history. So, in case people are not familiar with the incredible, like, historical things that you've done on Nifty Gateway, they should definitely check it out. I'll pin that up at top. But yes, thank you for that intro, Trevor.
You're welcome.
I'll swing the mic to Fungible. Thanks for joining us today, GMGM.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, Fudgy here. Um, Long time. Well, for the past few years, I should say, I've been operating a startup called Schiller. We do marketing, consulting, media, events, and a bunch of things for some great teams in this space. Long time art enjoyer, kind of stumbled into collecting here a few years ago. And yeah, it's just been really interesting to see how things have shaped up over that time. It's pretty incredible what's now accessible to us all as either participants, enjoyers, patrons, or creators. Not that I really identify with the last point, but happy to chime in. And yeah, I left a little caveat in the comments in this space to anyone that listens to me, or anyone on Twitter, I would say, for the most part. Take everything with a grain of salt, challenge it, play with the ideas in your mind. And yeah, for me especially, I don't know what anyone should do, but I'm happy to share my thoughts and help you come to conclusions that feel right.
Yeah, appreciate you joining the conversation. And I did tune in and listen to the recording of the Schiller space that you were hosting. So it definitely drew inspiration for some of the conversation we'll be having today. So thank you for taking the time. I see Paper Buddha on stage. What's up, PB? Do you want to give a brief intro and say hi?
Yeah, thanks. Hey, everybody. Paper Buddha. I am a collector and an almost famous underground artist. I've been in the space for quite a while, been in crypto since 2013. So, really excited for this conversation. It's been a good one over the course of the last week. I've been involved in quite a few different conversations about it. So, really great timing. I'm excited to be here with everyone.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time. I'm glad to have you on stage. Hernan, I'll give you the mic. GM.
GMV.
Oh my goodness. Sorry, I said Hernan, but Brando, you can go ahead first. We'll let you go first.
Sorry, I
It's
heard
okay.
Brando, so I just jumped in. Sorry, the name sounds similar. I'm Brando, the CEO and co-founder of Nympha, which is a curated marketplace on ETH, Shape, Base, and Arbitrum. Now focusing on collection, so drops of, let's say, more than 3+ artworks at a time. We think that it gives more narrative and context to any drops. I'm really excited to finally have the chance to speak with a broader audience about marketplaces in general, and I'm super eager to learn a lot of and receive a lot of feedbacks on what the different players in this ecosystem, other builders, collectors, creators, and more have to to say about platforms in general and their role in the ecosystem. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for joining, Brandon. For those that don't know, Nympha is definitely check out Brando's bio. The link is in there. Nympha also has a physical location and space in Milano, which I had a chance to visit for your grand opening. So it was awesome to also see a physical location happening for Nympha. And Hernan, I'll give you the mic. Go ahead, GM.
Hey, GM, it's good to be up here with you all. Well, that was certainly bogus. Brandon over here kind of stealing my spotlight, flash rugging me. How's it going, Brandon? Yeah, so my name is Hernan Nanimalissimo. I've been in the space since 2019 when I collected my first NFT. That was a Lucio Paletti piece about the history of Bitcoin. And yeah, that was my favorite means of procrastinating while I was in law school at the time, just researching crypto, researching NFTs, their functionality, their significance. And I've been in the space as a collector since that time period and have been fortunate enough to be with Maker's Place as a curator since about 2020. So it's a pleasure being here with all of these legends. I'm looking forward to having this chat.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time, Renan. And I clearly saved the best for last. Violet Jones, GM. How are you?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. For those who don't know me, I'm a traditional painter who came to the space in 2019, and some people might know me for my silly GMs and recently for my natural remedy posts. And here you go. And I'm married to Trevor.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining, Violet. I know you're going to have some interesting takes for today's conversation. Before we start, Milton, I'll give you the mic just to give our last disclosure, I guess, as we start the conversation.
Yeah, I touched on it, but I think it's worth reiterating that we want to emphasize this is not an attack on any marketplace. We actually want to take a moment to thank and acknowledge all of them. Putting time and effort into building something that's never been done before is certainly not easy. It's scary. We should commend them for doing so. And definitely nobody's perfect. So you can't please everyone at the end of the day. There will be people who disagree, and it's really easy to critique right now. It's an easy target, but marketplaces have formed a fundamental reason why we exist here today and saw as much success as we did early on. So we do want to give a shout out to them and make sure that we remain respectful of the marketplaces. If you're not being respectful, we're going to let you know on the space today. But I'm sure everybody is going to keep it raw, real, but respectful today. So looking forward to starting the chat. Also, I would mention we have a lot to cover. We have a ton of great guests already on stage, and there's likely going to be more people who join. We want all of you, all of your opinions. However, we usually want to keep the responses to about 2 minutes or less. So I'll be timing these from the sideline. If we get running a little bit long and we're coming up on that 2-minute mark, I'm going to give you the TikTok sound effect on the soundboard here that lets you know you got about 10 seconds to wrap up that idea. All right, let's rock.
Okay, so I think a huge part of the conversations that are going on is that expectations are not always in sync regarding marketplaces. So artists, collectors, and curators perhaps are expecting things from a marketplace that they don't always deliver on. Which brings me to the first question. I'm going to let everyone on stage answer, so we'll go around the room. But in your own words, I want you to define a marketplace and tell me what you think its roles and responsibilities are. I don't know if someone wants to jump in to answer it first, or I'm just going to pick on someone. Riley, go ahead.
Hi. So very quickly, in my opinion, marketplace in this space was supposed to be like equivalent of something like a gallery in a traditional art space. The problem I saw very quickly was that my marketplaces were taking far too many artists, and also apart from the curated drops that they were organizing, there were many artists dropping in the meantime. So there was just basically flood and oversaturation of the market. They were not coping with the publicity for the artists and reviving the unsold works. And it basically became too much for everyone, for artists and for the collectors. Also, it became like a one bag where everything was dropped within. There were no clear categories. So it was very difficult to find what you were aiming at. And also there was no two-tier kind of commission taking. So there are like flat fees, 10 to 15%. And regardless of the fact if the artist was responsible for the full promotion and they were just facilitating their kind of space, or if they were doing some promotion, everybody got the same cut taken. And also the fact that no projects were taken on the individual kind of basis. So it was like one size fits all. That was a very big problem. And after they started noticing these problems, I personally, like, I never go public. I never kind of comment on these things. I appreciate what they are doing. And definitely, like HardArt said, I agree with a lot of things. However, noticing these problems, having certain amount of money when they made it in the hype and at the top, these problems were not addressed. After having many conversations with many people from many different platforms, these problems have never been addressed. And that's where I started seeing the problem. And they are still not being properly addressed. And that kind of turned away both collectors and the artists from them and kind of started dying out. We both need each other, but it needs to be taken into consideration and addressed. And like, I don't know what the answer is, and maybe some form of the collective feedback and conversations could help with it. But definitely these problems are still there. And as we can see, my marketplaces are going under. So this is my 5 cents from the artist perspective.
Yeah, I hear you, Violet, and you're off to a great start. I saw Platsky join the stage and immediately throw her hands up, so I want to give her the mic to maybe respond or add on, and then Trevor will swing it to you. But Gian Platsky, and I don't know if you want to give a brief intro as to who you are so people have the context.
Hi. I'm Platsky. I work for Super Chief. I'm the project manager there for it's been going on 9 months. And prior to that, I worked for Not Fundable, where we had an artist incubator and we kind of helped artists get, onboarded. Plus we did the collection that was just mentioned before from Lucio Paletti. So that was cool. Can you repeat? The question was the responsibilities of marketplaces, right?
Yeah, what do you think the role and responsibilities are for marketplaces, correct?
Well, I mean, from when I came around, I think there was definitely 2 different types, the curated ones and the uncurated ones. And I think they were both essential because the nice part, now this is from a business perspective, I thought it was wonderful that anyone who wanted to try to sell their art or present themselves could do that individually without any barriers. So I really appreciated the early OpenSea, the fact that it existed, but not all of the policies and the ways they conducted themselves. And I'm not saying conducted themselves in a harsh way. A lot of these companies that, started marketplaces, they were figuring it out too. And, trying to make things successful and trying to make money on their end and trying to navigate this whole new thing, we all were. So everything that I believe was Violet just talking, everything she said, I agreed with. I didn't come up to counter what she was saying or anything. I just wanted to talk. And, I think that a marketplace that is not curated might have less responsibility to the artist as far as promotions and things like that, because I looked at it more like an eBay situation where it's available to anybody and everyone. And, if you agree to pay what fees they want, there you go. And then we also have the options to have our own website, use something like Manifold or those types of services and just do it completely on your own. The curated marketplaces, I think they have a responsibility to maybe they could take, if they're especially taking a higher percentage, to market for those artists. So, if you're being curated, yeah.
I was just going to add, I love that you brought that up and posed the whole curated versus uncurated, because the hot debate a year, 2-3 years ago was the whole gatekeeping, and if yes, that's how we should be. Yeah. So I love that and seeing kind of the shift now with the conversation. So, okay, I'm going to keep my comments for more of the end, but I wanted to hear from Trevor, who had his hands up next, and then maybe we'll swing it to Brando from a marketplace perspective to respond to some of the comments as well. Go ahead, Trevor.
Hey, Vasia, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good. I'm just trying my new earbuds on, so just wanted to check, but all good. So, yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting conversation. I know that I'd posted a while back, I think it was under one of Pablo's posts, about this in particular. And I remember, of course, obviously coming more from the traditional art background and commercial galleries, that by 2019, and then when things really started to kick off in 2020, um, it there was this euphoria, this artist euphoria, um, and definitely a kind of utopian mentality that decentralized NFT platforms are going to save the world, and every artist is going to become, financially independent. And from my perspective, I thought like this was silly. First off, you just have to look back at, like, say, 2005 when Etsy came out. The Saatchi.com, like Charles Saatchi had his platform, I think 2010, where anybody in the world could sell their work online. And they had their highlights. They could, you could probably buy your ads spots or whatever. So there was, huge opportunity for artists all around the world to sell their art and bypass the traditional art gallery system, the more curated, to get your artwork into a commercial gallery, even at a lower level, is difficult to do. So, but there were these platforms online, 15 years before Super Rare appeared. And I thought that it was just a bit naive of these conversations by artists to think that decentralization was going to fix everything. And I thought, like, that's a bit silly. So I was having these conversations with artists back like in 2020, and I was getting a lot of hate for it, for my observations that I don't think it's going to change anything. I said, in fact, that I think that these platforms are going to have to become more like the traditional, more centralized art systems to find for the curatorial aspect of it. And it has to be that. And of course, I got hate for that too. But by that time, I was getting my mouth shut. Anyway, I think, I think that this really is an experimental process, and everybody's learning as we go, and we are learning. I've got nothing but good things to say about all the marketplaces, for trying. They did their best. Maybe some of them could have done better, especially when the money was rolling in. And I think greed took over, and there's misdirection or a lack of vision, unfortunately, and that happens with all businesses, or most businesses. So I think we're in a transitional period now where we're trying, and it's about education, and education not of just only of the people who are starting up platforms, but also of the artists in the space. And there's going to be this intersection of, what do people want, and the market's going to kind of find out what that is, and there's going to be a massive divergence in all different types of platforms and what people want. And I think that's essentially what's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 5 years, that it will begin to mirror a lot of the traditional art world, the trad art world, and commercial art galleries, whether people like it or not. It is what it is.
Trevor, you triggered it. People are joining the stage. I see so many hands. No, but I did pin the tweet. That was one of the tweets that I specifically resonated a lot with me. And thank you for, taking the hate like a man and sticking around. But I definitely think that was a huge overarching theme that I was reading in a lot of these conversations that were happening the last week, is really the, are we supposed to be decentralized versus are we going to be going more the trad art world, and learning from, like you mentioned, Etsy and all these other kind of examples. It's interesting, and that you made those parallels. This is, I definitely think, a much, much larger conversation that Milton and I might be hosting for next week. But I'm with you. The whole WAGMI concept, didn't make sense to me. We can't all make it. I don't think that's realistic. As nice as it sounds, and as much as I want everyone here to win and all of that, it just, to me, didn't sound realistic. So thank you so much for making that comment and for sharing. I do want to hand it to Brando for more of a marketplace perspective. I would love to hear from him, and then we'll go around the room as well. So Brando, mic is all yours.
I love the conversation so far. I think there are a lot of good topics. We could spend hours and hours and hours, and a lot of content for the podcast. I think that from a basic perspective, a marketplace should be a place where demands and supply meet, independently of the product category the marketplace itself is selling. And I really like what Trevor said about that we are not actually reinventing the wheel. So the model is old. the product category is somehow new, because digital art is not new. Tokenized digital art, like on chain, it's new. So the marketplace model, I think, at its essence, again, it's a place where collectors or buyers find sellers, and vice versa. Of course, as we were saying before, I think that the higher the fees and let's say probably the curated level of a marketplace is, the higher is on the other side the responsibility and the services that the marketplace must offer in order to, at the end, justify a price which is expressed by the fees. So I do agree with the fact that sometimes in certain conditions, artists frequently, like, I don't know, complain about maybe curated marketplaces not putting enough effort to promote, or not having enough, touch, feel, and attention to each specific artist. This, especially in the past, probably was due to having too much noise, as someone was mentioning, again, having maybe too many artists on a single platform. Of course, it's really complicated to manage. From our perspective, we feel the responsibility of course, asking higher fees. That implies offering higher services. So we spend a lot of time with a single artist. We create narratives. We try to make like interviews, articles, to properly build something that looks more like probably a gallery service than what a typical marketplace could offer. And this is really peculiar of our space. I think also building on what Trevor said, that we with that naive approach of reinventing everything, we somehow disregarded what the traditional art player were and what their role were. So we have curators like acting as galleries acting as marketplaces acting as, I don't know, whatever they want to act as. And I think that we just rushed too much on the decentralization of things, and on thinking that we can do everything independently without putting too like effort into thinking what the role were and what's the value added by each role. So I think there's just, and the bear market was an incredible like opportunity for like step back and think a little bit more about, okay, but what, like, as an artist or as a marketplace or as a curator, what's my role, and what I can do, and what like I must do with someone else help, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree, Brando. And I think it's, the growing too quickly that maybe we're not ready for Web 3. Maybe we need to be Web 2.5 for a little bit longer just to put the proper infrastructure in place. So thank you so much for sharing. And I've had the opportunity and very grateful to have worked with Nympha before. So I can vouch for, I know, the various different services that you guys provide. And what I specifically love is just getting to know the team, as well as with other marketplaces too. Having that kind of communication really helps the experience. I did want to share the mic around. I think Fungible will go to you next. Thank you so much for patiently waiting. Go ahead.
Is it okay if I pass it to Hernan first? I
Absolutely.
just feel like they're probably more suited to speak to this, given their role at Maker's Place. But would love to chime in after.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead, Hernan.
Thanks, Fungi. And no, not at all, man. I think you're just as suited to speak on this as I am, and as all of the participants here on stage are as well. Just a quick disclaimer. I want to make sure everyone knows that I'm speaking, on my individual capacity and not necessarily on behalf of Maker's Place. While I'll definitely be speaking and include my experience at Maker's Place, I think that's a huge benefit and a huge plus. I just want to make sure that everyone knows I'm not necessarily like a spokesperson for Maker's Place. But yeah, look, I think that these are all really good points. I think that, there is no one definition for what a marketplace is or how it defines or describes itself to be. I think that that is up to the individual marketplaces to decide. And as you can see, we have a plethora of marketplaces and they all sort of do it differently. I think that if you look at the marketplaces, they all have one big meta.
right? In the end, they want to highlight artists, they want to highlight incredible art, and they want to grow the space in a way that's sustainable and that works for everyone. And I think that if we frame this conversation from that perspective and that standpoint, we'll realize that we are all aligned. But what is to be nuanced is the distinguishing aspects of how we get to that specific end goal, right? And there are different means to getting to that outcome. And as you can see, I think Super Rare took the path of being super highly curated and one of ones. Nifty Gateway was highly curated in that, the only way you could really put up artwork on there was through some kind of drop exhibition. Maker's Place did sort of both things, right? That Maker's Place wanted to provide artists with a marketplace and storefront so that they could mint artworks on their own as part of their storefront, and yet they also wanted to create highly curated drops and exhibitions and promote artists. So I think that platforms took different routes, and I think that one of the major aspects to consider, because this conversation is very nuanced, is how these marketplaces went about achieving these end goals, and that I think helped to define these marketplaces. But in the end, I think it's important to know that the marketplaces wanted to all achieve that same meta, that same outcome. And so yeah, I think that it's just simply important to keep that in mind. I had another point that I was going to make, but oh, okay. Yeah, the point is about decentralization. I think that all of us in this space, I wouldn't say necessarily struggled with, but kept in mind this idea of central decentralization. And as Trevor mentioned, how it was going to sort of save all of us. And I think that all marketplaces thought about and highly considered to what degree they should sort of become this democratic place. And I think that, if you look at the history and trajectory of the marketplaces, Gateway, for example, did that by allowing more curators and putting power in the hands of curators and opening that up. Maker's Place, did that by allowing more artists to come on board and have a storefront on Maker's Place. And I think that at some point we realized that there was an oversaturation and that we had to come back down from that because it was just too much, too open, and growing too fast. And I think that these companies and these marketplaces are trying to figure it out. If it's important to also keep in mind the fact that this space changes so rapidly that it's very difficult to keep pace with as an individual. Now imagine trying to do so on a company level where it's important to get buy-in, where there's a little bit more hierarchy, there's a little bit more collaborative decision making, and not just the individual making a decision, which makes things much easier and expeditious. So I think that there are a lot of factors that we need to consider, but I think framing the conversation from the standpoint and perspective that the marketplaces all have the same end goal is a really important uniting factor for us to keep in mind.
Yeah, a lot of good points you brought up, and I'm with you. I mean, I remember when Nifty did the publisher. For me, that was like their downfall of what they were. So I don't think the quote unquote gatekeeping was what we were ready for. But that being said, I did pin up a tweet from Daniel over from Transient Labs. He did a good job. He mentioned this concept of identity crisis and kind of went through different platforms and how they've pivoted. I'm not going to go through it, but I just wanted to pin it up top for anyone that wanted to reference it. I thought it was a lot of good points he made. Before we throw it to the artists again, I do want to just give the mic one more time to someone from more of the marketplace perspective. I saw Rob join the stage. Rob, GM, how are you?
GM. Told you I was just gonna hang out, listen, tune in. Wasn't gonna say much. But I don't know. I just felt like I had to throw my 2 cents in there. Like I'll say this. I'm not a fan necessarily, and again, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for Maker's Place or for anyone else. Just speaking for myself, my experience. But I'm not a fan of when folks try to wedge against like marketplaces. Like the truth is, the top tier artists, have the demand to sort of own their own distribution channels. So for those artists, like I saw a tweet earlier about, Patrick Amidon saying like, we don't need marketplaces. That's complete BS. I feel like that's a wrong messaging, like that's to send to artists, because the reality is not everyone is Patrick Amidon. Not everyone is Trevor Jones. Not everyone is Beeple. Like, these are folks, artists that have a healthy distribution channel. They don't necessarily need the marketplaces. The marketplaces need them more than they need the marketplaces, unless there's a specific target market that they're trying to reach. And if that marketplace, has that target market within their backyard, then it makes sense to, do a partnership. But the other artists, the other group of artists don't necessarily have that distribution. And this is something that I've said to you before, Vasia. Like, I don't care what marketplace I'm working for. I'm always going to be honest, and I'm going to give you my feedback based off Rob. I'm not going to give you feedback based off Rob from, whatever marketplace, because at the end of the day, it comes down to expectations. And what I've said to you is, the way I see marketplaces is distribution channels. Each one has a different audience base that you're trying to reach as an artist. It is your job as the artist to understand the demographics, the collector base, sort of the distribution channel. And if that distribution channel makes sense for you, then so be it. Choose that marketplace. I don't like selling on anyone on any marketplace that I work for. If it makes sense for you and it fits and I can help you, I will help you. If not, that is totally okay. There are other options. But at the bare minimum, I think the most important thing is for artists to understand the distribution channels. And again, for those top tier artists, for them they're fine, but what about the rest? They do need a distribution channel, because that's what the marketplaces can offer, to distribution channel. And then is the job of the marketplace to be able to cultivate the network of collectors, community members, people within the space that care, to be able to partake in releases and to help sort of grow the distribution channel. If the marketplaces are not doing that, then they're doing a great disservice to the community and to the artists that they're servicing. That is the problem. It's not forget marketplaces, fu marketplaces, we're anti marketplaces. I think that's such a bad mentality to have, because the reality is, if you don't have a distribution channel of your own, then the distribution channel owns you. That's something that I've said. I've tweeted that out before. You either own the distribution channel or it owns you. And we deal with that on X, and we deal with that on other places. So if you're an artist and you want to say FU marketplaces and you want to say, like, I'm on my own, just make sure you really have your own distribution channel where you don't necessarily need marketplaces then. But the reality is that the rest of the artists who are growing, who are developing, who care about relationships, um, do need the marketplace. And there are really good places, for example, like Maker's Place, that has over 30 years of experience in the traditional art market, through agencies, through art galleries, through, auction houses that have the experience again that artists can tap into and grow. And my experience so far with Makers Places, again, they have a ton of experience, and they really care about the long term development of the artists that they're working with. So if I'm an artist, um, and I'm developing and I'm emerging, this is exactly the sort of marketplace that I want to develop a relationship with. But the reality is, within Web3, not every marketplace and platform has that experience, has that commitment to artists long term. And so we deal with some of the situations that we dealt with in the past where, you know, a marketplace wants to do a release with an artist, but it's more so on a project base, and they don't necessarily care about the long term development of the artist. So I'm just, again, just sharing my 2 cents there. I hate the narrative of oh, we hate marketplaces, they're bad. We're artists, we can do everything on our own. It's like, yeah, you can absolutely do everything on your own and wear all of the hats. But a lot of artists dealt with that through the bear market and they're miserable. And we all know it. You can't do it by yourself. You need people, you need a team. And again, if you're working with the right people, the right team, a marketplace with a ton of experience, it could really benefit all around. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Man, Rob, you beat me to it. You beat me to the punch. Patrick's tweet that you referenced is pinned up top. I'm going to kind of deep dive into it a little bit later in the space, but I completely agree with a lot of what you said. And that's why my first question was about what people think the expectations of a marketplace are. Because if we look at the actual word marketplace, like think back in the day, a marketplace in a town was essentially just like a location where shop vendors gathered, like think farmers market. It's just a place where people are able to congregate to open up shop and sell their own goods. So I honestly think that a marketplace is exactly that. Like a lot of collectors, it's just congregating a lot of people and driving them to one platform to shop and to purchase. And I think the expectations back, when there was a bull market and things were flying and money was flying around the space differently, it was a lot easier to sell out without much additional support from a marketplace to an extent, compared to now. Obviously, the marketplaces are still doing the same thing. I mean, they're still doing the basic, email blast and XYZ and giving creators certain tools, but I feel like because the sales are declining is where some of the conversations are kind of getting heated because the results are not the same. That being said, there are a lot of hands up. Milton, I know as a co-host you threw your hand up, so I'll let you kind of go, and then maybe we'll swing it to Paper Buddha, who I know has been waiting patiently for a while.
Yeah, actually, I was going to keep it pretty simple. And I do like Rob's take in that I don't think the message needs to be we don't need marketplaces whatsoever. But I think it's an option that more artists are taking advantage of if they can wear multiple hats to build their own distribution channel. And I did want to pass it actually to Paper Buddha and Rachel, a couple of artists in the room who I know Paper Buddha, for example, last time he was on the show, mentioned his website, and I believe you can purchase art directly from him. I know there's some other artists that are taking advantage of that, building that out for themselves. So I'd be curious to hear a couple takes from the artists in the room that may have already built something like that and what the experience has been like so far. So PB, I wanted to pass it to you first.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'll try to keep it kind of relatively short. I think that one of the issues we have in our scene here is that it's really convoluted. What is a platform, right? I've heard people talk about transient already. I've heard people talk about OpenSea. I've heard people talk about curated platforms. And so I really want to say there's like in my opinion, three different buckets here. We've got these kind of catch-all platforms that are very similar to, like, if you're a certain age, very similar to Tower Records or Virgin or any of these like old record shops where you would go in, they treat the artist like shit. They don't care about the artist. They're just there to sell CDs. It's purely business, right? And I think there's a lot of platforms like that, and we gotta realize that that's like a scatter shot, right? And that's okay. That's okay for people to be there. As far as I'm concerned, that's the bottom of the funnel. And then you start working your way up. And kind of the next bucket is really the curated platform, the platform that does care about the artist, that is about the longevity, that's doing curated releases, that maybe isn't accepting literally everybody off the street, right? And so I think that those play an important role. And a quick side note on that trip, for the last 2-3 years, I've had a couple of curated releases at these platforms, and they fall completely flat on their face. So there's this other thing that's happening where some of us artists are starting to get historical experience with platforms. I've been burned 4 times trying to drop curated stuff. Am I really going to do it again? I don't know, right? And so now we have this other complication of a history of performing not great with a lot of these platforms. Then we've got the third bucket, which is the creator tools. Creator tools, a creator suite is something like Transient or Props, and that's totally different. That is about self-sovereignty. That is about decentralization. And from there, I can plug that into wherever I want. I can have my Manifold or Transient contract indexed on Super Rare, and you can go to Super Rare and you can buy it. They can take their platform fee, and but it's still completely autonomous. I'm autonomous from them. I'm not dropping in the Super Rare contract, right? And so that's kind of like the top of the funnel for me. And then, just as an artist, as a business person, well, none of this shit's working for me. So what is the solution? The solution is to go to real world events, to build relationships one-on-one, painfully slow, one-on-one, to make my website as cool as I can, as simple as I can, so that people can come to my website, see what the drop is, click a button, get redirected to whatever platform I listed it on, and buy it, right? And I think that that mentality for artists, the whatever platform I minted it on, I think is actually really healthy. You look at these people like business partners. I'm listening to Maker's Place speak right now, and I'm going, that's a good business partner. That's somebody I want to fuck with, right? And I think that that's really important, that we vet all of these platforms as artists. Pretend you're a business guy or a businesswoman in a business suit and be like, do I want to do business with the person across the table from me? Are they going to screw me long run? Do they have my best interest in mind? Am I going to provide a value to them, right? Because that's another thing. If I get asked to come do a curated drop on a platform and I'm not pulling my own weight, I'm not getting my own collectors involved, I'm not doing my due diligence, I'm not out there promoting the platform as well, well, of course it's not going to work, right? We both have to put in the effort. So I think that we're at a really interesting time and place with these platforms. I would love to see more curated platforms. The problem there is, I think, the bear market hit, and a lot of people said, is this a sustainable business model? Well, fuck yeah, it is, man. It's been working in art forever, in traditional art. So why would it not work here? You got some slow revenue, identify additional revenue streams. Shout out to Rodeo and Foundation, right? Like that is an additional revenue stream, not a replacement. So I think that those things are really important. And I think that's kind of my tirade, is that, like, we really need to separate these things out mentally. A creator suite, a curated marketplace, and just like lazy minting on, the Walmart of NFTs.
Yeah, I love that breakdown. Thank you so much for explaining it that way. I actually never thought about it in those buckets, but absolutely, it all makes sense. I wanted to give Rachel the mic as well. Go ahead, Rachel. GM, how are you?
Good morning, everyone. Wow, this is such a fiery conversation, and I am loving every single perspective and thoughts. Like what Paper Buddha said, this is a great time just to listen to other people's ideas and insights and where they're standing. And it is kind of like a job interview. You do have to think about who you align with and who you put your art with. For everyone who doesn't know me, I am a traveling photographer. I live out of my suitcase, and yeah, I really like animals and landscapes and really remote places. But back to this spicy topic. Thank you for the mic, by the way, Vasia and Milton. Really great. First, I just wanted to throw it up to Fungible's post up at the top, one of the first post pins. I agree with him saying that artists really need to be informed and make their own decisions based on, their own goals and situations. But I also wanted to bring it back to a couple minutes ago and a couple speakers ago when we were talking about traditional art ways. And I agree that the WAGMI situation isn't really smart. And like Trevor said, we do have to bring in those traditional art systems and, centralized curators, because we can't just like break the wheel and like be all fine and dandy. There's a reason why they existed for so long. But I do believe that Web3 has offered everyone a chance to redefine how curation works. Because the thing is, we're not taking an issue with curators or marketplaces themselves. We are more, we're more annoyed, or not annoyed, we're more nervous about how they curate, about how they measure the worth of an artist, the art of an artist, the life of an artist, to be determined as worthy. And I'm totally speaking from my own experience, and this is not throwing shade at any one platform or whatever, but like for me, it took me over 3 years to get onto Super Rare. And that was only through my network of really amazing people that I was able to get on in my artwork. But that didn't stop me from, selling one image for $45,000 in this space. That didn't stop me from minting and connecting with collectors and, finding my way selling artwork. Like, even though marketplaces and curation happen, that shouldn't stop artists from, creating their systems and building up their systems to be maybe like Amazon or People or someone like that. Just real quick, because I know I have like a time limit here. Yeah, basically I do look at the role of marketplaces within Web3 as, like Rob said, a distribution tool for artists all around the world, but also as a place for curators to both serve the collectors and the artists. I think this is like the fine distinction where Web3 comes in, where we're working for a different and better place. And it's not replacing the system, it's fixing the system. And that system is, how do we curate, how do we value this digital art? And I think marketplaces have a great hub to educate, to help collectors, and to, further, broaden this idea of what curation is. I do have other thoughts, but lastly, I just wanted to say that, oh my gosh, there's so many thoughts, but yeah, my last thought would just be that artists themselves, most artists that I talk to, and myself as well, we're not looking to become the top 1%. We're not looking to become famous and have that 15 minutes of fame and like sell out and stuff. We are looking for ways and tools to build a sustainable and diversified system that supports our career as an artist. And like I said in the beginning, I agree with Fungible. Artists need to think about and align their actions with the correct marketplace, with the correct tools, with whatever that aligns the best with their artwork. And the long-term view is where artists should be focusing on. It's where marketplaces should also be focusing on, but I think they are. And that basically, together with all of these really amazing open conversations, we can start shaping the wheel to run smoother, to build a more sustainable, and in my opinion, more diverse and inclusive way for artists to support their careers all around the world.
Rachel, I
Thank
like that take. Yeah, I was going to say sustainable was what really stuck with me about that. And I think it's really telling from your standpoint, because I know oftentimes you're looking to sell your work, not to make $1 million, not to make the headlines on RD's report necessarily, although that's nice from time to time. Like you mentioned, you've done it, but more so to make it to the next stop. I know a lot of times your work funds you to get to the next place and dot the map. And so sustainability is huge. I agree with you 100% on that. I know Fungible's gotten a couple head nods here in the conversations, and he did pass the mic to Hernan earlier instead of taking it. So I wanted to respect his courtesy there and give it back to him. We do have a few more hands raised. So if your hands raised now, we'd love to get to you. We're normally keeping this to an hour. So I know Violet has had her hand raised, Hernan and Trevor. We want to get to you three. And that's probably going to be the end of our guest today. So
I just
Fungible.
want to say I was first. Violet was definitely behind me. Definitely. And definitely Hernan.
I,
Definitely behind me.
I've, I have to leave in like 3 minutes, so I'm gonna tap in pretty quick here. But thanks so much. Yeah, just been really nice to get to learn and listen to all of you. I think we've covered the primary core roles of marketplaces. It's a distribution. They need to be an appealing, presentable hub that attracts many people, many more than the artist who is releasing the work would garner on their own, but more importantly, many of the right people. I think secondarily, they need to be providing an exceptionally smooth, as frictionless as possible point of sale. And that should be, another kind of assumption there. Whether that's in presentation or tech, supplementary marketing. And then I think, the underlying principles of just, meeting the artist's needs, being very transparent on what they're taking, and having their fee be commensurate or equivalent to the to what they're providing, either in distribution or end sale price. And then I think to flip the question on its side, from the role of or from the perspective of a um, enjoyer collector, I think the role of the artists within Web3 is to learn and inform themselves on everything that's available within the potential toolbox. all of the materials that could be put to use, whether those are teams, platforms, marketplaces, smart contracts, experiments in edition sizing and gating, in content supplementation, in community creation and moderation, and making a home for all of that, and having a newsletter, because there is just so much work here that can never be, at least until the AI is on par and safe. It just can't be abstracted away from with smart contracts or blockchain tech. Not yet, at least. And yeah, so I think, it's to be really curious and to take ownership of what you're agreeing to by releasing on places, and to have fair assumptions too. I think, it is the case that pretty much every art marketplace in this space is founded and operated by a team that is absolutely doing their best as they see fit. I think many make fumbles or stumbles, as is only human, especially in a space that moves as rapidly and violently upwards and downwards as this one does. And I think also another role of the marketplace is to anticipate the needs. If they are providing the vehicle for distribution and sales, they need to not only understand what people want right now, but what they're going to want and need in a year, 5 years. And I think sometimes we hit a point of dissonance, where what people want is someone, a marketplace to build or market in a way that solves their problems today. When, in reality, that work has to be done in, quarters and years ahead of time to have any staying power or impact. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks so much. Appreciate the time. We'll, listen into the rest of this recording, and hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you, you too. Thanks for taking the time to join and for those closing comments. Milton, I'm sorry, I spaced out. Did you say Violet first, right?
Yeah,
Wait, wait.
despite what Trevor said. Trevor said
Ladies
chivalry's
first.
dead. Normally he's
Ladies.
sucking up to his wife on these shows, so I'm surprised to see this turn from him. But
I will
Violet's
say,
still got her
ladies,
hand
ladies
raised,
first,
so
ladies first, because she is going to be making dinner for me tonight. So I don't want anything to go into that food that shouldn't be there. So, sweetheart, the floor is yours.
Oh, shush, Jones. Thanks, guys. I actually wanted to touch upon a few things that actually Rob said. It was very important that he emphasized that marketplaces are mostly our distribution channels. But to be honest, know your audience. I noticed that in whole existence of all platforms, once again, it was one size fit all. And how many of you, just ask yourself questions, in the top season of all the drops, how many of you were getting email blasts daily, hourly about the drops from all different platforms? It was just basically to the point that many people unsubscribed from those emails. Nobody was interested in getting them because there were far too many. So what about like getting to know your collector, like pulling the top 1,000 collectors from your active collectors from your platforms, whatever platform it is, and basically polling them on like, what are you interested in? What kind of art would you invest? What's your budget and stuff like that? And then customizing basically advertising towards and catering towards those, a little bit of TLC towards the collectors. And that would be also easier to then curate the artists, because like I drop, let's say curated drop, but that goes to every single collector. Not every single collector is interested in fine art coming with the physical. So it's absolutely bonkers that every single collector gets information about every single artist that drops with the platform. So I think like curating your collectors and basically showing them love and that you care, and maybe rewarding them for top, like if somebody collects a lot, maybe connecting them with some discounts for like display products. You could, like the platforms could work this way, and like by keeping collectors with you and rewarding them for investing in your platform, then that's going to make super attractive to artists to drop, because the collectors are there, so the artists will be found and they will be more curated towards those tastes. But I saw nothing of that sort done. So once again, let's open that bag of open sea and let's, categorize the fish that is there. And both going for artists and collectors, there should be clear curation on both sides and a little bit more TLC towards both. And I'm sorry if people disagree, but yeah, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
I really like that take, Violet. And I've been on a budget traveling lately on Spirit Airlines, and even they are sending me emails asking me how my flight was. So I spent a hell of a lot more on digital art in my day, and I haven't gotten the first one of those emails for some of my feedback. And even when I've given it unsolicited, and lots of us have at once, it's gone on deaf ears. So, God, I would welcome that to have some feedback mechanism to where we as the collectors don't get spat on and treated like shit, pardon my French, but that's has really happened in our space. So I love that. It's honestly the first time I've even heard that, which is surprising, but I take notes on that a lot. That's a great idea, Violet. So
I've been giving that feedback for a long time privately to many platforms. So I'm really surprised that nothing of that has been done. So let's praise the platforms for their existence, but let's also criticize them for not taking it on.
It's happening right now, Violet. Hence why I'm at Maker's Place right now. There's a concierge, program. There's myself and Kat who are leading the initiatives in terms of private sales, one-on-one conversations with specific collectors for specific releases. And I'll say this, it's something that, through my experience, through multiple platforms that I've worked with, I felt like should have been prioritized more. And I do agree with you that it is kind of a one size fits all, sort of approach, but that's not the case, at Maker's Place. And that's why I'm, working with Maker's Place and working as part of the concierge, program where we are working with collectors, cultivating a network, of collectors as well, so that when we do have curated releases, and have consignments of specific works, that we're able to provide that value to the artists that we're working with. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. I don't think enough platforms are doing it, and I do think that's one of the biggest values that platforms can add to artists that they're working with, but that hasn't always been the case in the past.
yeah, thanks, Rob. And that wasn't to insinuate nobody's doing it. Nobody's done it for me personally, but I don't represent the entire market either. But I'm glad to hear that Maker's Place is taking those efforts seriously. And I know the good work that you and Kat are doing. So I think the market is maturing, specifically Maker's Place is making some headway in that regard. So I'm glad to hear it. I wanted to hear Trevor's take on this because he was chivalrous enough to let his wife go first. So the dinner will be untainted, Trevor, but go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's been a great conversation, and definitely it's something I think you should probably bring up in future spaces. I think there's a lot to talk about. I'll just kind of come at it from a different angle here. Firstly, um, to be an artist is a privilege, but to sell art is even more of a privilege. It's not like we're freaking heart surgeons or construction, or road makers or something. Like we are literally doing the dream job, and to be able to sell anything is a privilege. So I don't like that entitlement that a lot of artists I see. A lot of artists, it's like, oh my God, it's like, I made so much money in 2021, now I can't sell anything. A good example, and I bring it up quite often, is the amazing artist Paul Reed, who's in the space. He's a phenomenal, one of the best, most talented painters, traditional painters I've ever known and seen. He's based here in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and we've had lots of conversations. I mean, he tells me a story about like his first solo show after graduating from art college. That was, I think, 2003, and that was the first show of his that I saw at the Scottish Gallery in Edinburgh. And it was an enormous sellout. I mean, he was like a phenom. Like everybody wanted his work, his paintings. He was selling at the Scottish Gallery, which is the most prestigious gallery in the country. He was just recently out of art college, just graduated, so he was very special. And he was thinking like, holy crap, like I've just made a ton of money. Everybody wants my work. Scottish Gallery booked him in, 2 years later for his next solo show because it takes him so long to create, such a massive amount of highly, highly skilled paintings. 2 years later, same time of the year, summer, he had his second show, and he said literally nothing sold. And it made him realize, first off, is that selling art is hard. So even though it's the same gallery, same owner, same reputation, same customers, for some reason, and there's things that are out of control of galleries or marketplaces that you don't have control over. And I'm sure Paul's such a laid back guy. He's not going to get mad at the gallery. It wasn't their fault. But I don't know. So all I'm saying is, like, for artists, you need to stop feeling entitled and just keep working. I'll give another example. Shortly after I graduated from art college, it was 2011. I was painting QR codes, and then augmented reality paintings in 2013. So we're talking like 11, 12 years ago, and there was not one gallery who was wanting to show my work. I was showing at commercial galleries, mid-level commercial galleries in Edinburgh at the time, and nobody was wanting to show my work when I started to explore new technology. And for me, I was that freaking entitled little smartass artist thinking, like, how dare you not show my work? Like, nobody is doing this work in the UK. No, I've not seen anybody anywhere doing work like this. And you are not willing to open your stupid eyes and see what this is and what the future is, and not show you're not even going to show my work. You're not going to give me anything. And now looking back, as older and wiser, it's like, well, why would they? Because why would they would not want to have to explain to every single one of their visitors to the gallery, okay, now you need to download this app, now you need to open your phone, now you need to scan this painting, now you need to do this. Now it's like people come to, they knew who their customers were, their clientele. So it was me being entitled or feeling entitled that they weren't doing what I wanted them to do, which was to sell my amazing work. So, again, selling art is hard, and you have to kind of give credit to the marketplaces who are doing their best to provide a service. Now, saying that, on the flip side, there is issues with commission. Like, if there are commercial galleries who charge up to 60%, but if they're charging that, they provide a service. They will also introduce you to big collectors, who are willing to spend 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures on artwork. So commercial or marketplaces here who are still charging 15 or 20% and not doing what they should be doing to deserve those fees. And I love Maker's Place. I said forever I've had a soft spot for Maker's Place. We've had a lot of history together, but man, you guys went off on a tangent that was, not saying, the same for Super Rare and for Nifty Gateway, but there were some really bad decisions made. And I see you guys are now coming back, and I love the fact that Rob and Hernan are driving it forward, because it really needs a lot of direction and vision. And I just felt that a lot of the marketplaces have lost their vision. We're obviously cash grabs. You can't deny that. I know that everybody's like, well, we're trying new things, or let's bring in curated curators and do this. It was cash grabs. And it's not hard to see. And now the money's dried up. So, you got nobody to blame but yourselves. And it's nice to see that Maker's Place is making changes. I think it's going to be a struggle. I think, in the future, it's going to be more smaller curated marketplaces that are going to thrive with a quality curated platform for a small group of artists that they are building up and building relationships with buyers, with clientele. And that's another thing right now. How many new NFT collectors are coming into the space? There's a massive drive in 2021 because it was all speculation, and everybody's like, make it money hand over fist, or ETH, and that dried up. Everything crashed, and nobody wants to come back into this space again. So, again, this is for another conversation. I'm probably be going on too long. Just want to put a shout out to Patrick Amadon. Him and I had our words together too, and I love him. He is a troll. He does know how to push buttons. He says things, I think, partly naive, but partly to know that it's gonna push a lot of buttons, get engagement. But deep down, he's a very smart guy, and I do like him. So I've had some DMs with him. It's like, dude, like, are you serious? You said that? It's like, come on, man, you gotta. And so he was very apologetic, and a man of his word. And he actually deleted one of the tweets that I gave him shit for. And said, like, I didn't realize, I didn't mean it to come out that way. So he's a good guy, but just be aware that when he does post things, he's poking the bear too. So just realize that. Don't take too much offense by it.
Hey, you should love Patrick if he's a bear poker. He's a fellow bear poker, no? So, no, Trevor, thanks for that take. Appreciate it. And I did want to mention the time here because we're about 15 minutes over. I saw Jennifer from One Love Dow had requested. We'll have to get her on the next show. I've got Hernan and Paper Buddha have both raised their hands. And Vasi, if you've got the time to give, I can give time there. But please, gentlemen, if you can keep it to a couple minutes. I haven't used my time clicking effect here on my TikTok, but I will use it now because we do want to wrap up the space before too long. But Hernan, go ahead, and then we'll close with Paper Buddha.
No, I'll say don't let Hernan speak. Let Jennifer speak. We've already heard from Hernan. Right, Hernan?
I think Jennifer actually left. She had requested for quite some time, so we'll reach out to her personally, let her know we weren't trying to ignore her. But
It looks like
She
she's
She
has a
here.
dropped.
comment.
oh, I'm
She has a
sorry.
comment under this that you
Yeah, I
can
was gonna say.
She's
post
I
here,
it.
was
and
gonna say,
and
Milton.
she's a fellow Dominican, so I have to give her an upper hand there. I'm sorry. We already heard about. We already know Hernan.
Yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead. She can definitely go ahead. I have a good point, but for sure, we've heard about me. I defer.
To be honest with you, Milton, I don't know if you have to jump, but I don't mind letting the conversation kind of rock because I do like the points that are being brought up. The one thing I just wanted to comment, because Trevor did bring up a couple of obviously really good points, but he did mention this sense of like teamwork between artist and marketplace. And I know Paper Buddha had kind of touched upon that before too. So yeah, I just want to emphasize that as well. I just want to make sure the conversations are not always marketplace versus artist, and it's more of a unifying kind of theme. Jennifer did drop a comment about transparency, and the importance of transparency with marketplaces as just a good business practice. She's more than welcome to come on stage, I guess, and share her thoughts real quick. Arnon, I'm sorry, Rob skipped you. That wasn't us, but we can have Jennifer, I guess, maybe quickly touch on that and then jump to Paper Buddha.
Yeah, super quick. Hey, everybody. I love this conversation. I was just going to say that I really think that at the root of a lot of this, like static and, sort of tension that we've been seeing is a lack of transparency. I just feel like it's such a simple thing, but for whatever reason, it's not often employed. And it really can avoid just a lot because I feel like in the situation, with foundation sort of rebranding on Instagram, it just caught people by surprise. And if that's a direction that you need to take because of, just from a business financial position, then so be it, right? Like their goal is to still be around, right? I just think that it goes a long way to just be upfront with the artistic community. The artist community is extremely nuanced. They get it, they understand it. And having that open line of communication, I feel like could really have avoided some of that just sort of shock and then subsequent confusion and sort of hard feelings. Because, to this day, we don't really, I mean, like obviously Foundation exists and then Rodeo exists. I think I said Zora, I meant Rodeo. Um, but there's still some questions lingering, which is if they are going to be marketing Rodeo predominantly on an Instagram account that has 400,000 followers, how much of their resources, how much of their energy, how much of their time is going to be going into that versus the original foundation platform? Is there going to be any marketing that's sort of allocated for those artists that are still on foundation? It's just there's more kind of questions than there are answers. And I feel like when you answer those questions, then you feel as an artist like you are part of the team, you are part of the conversation, you are not an afterthought. And that's all that it is. Artists don't want to feel like they're an afterthought. They're the biggest asset. They are the gold here. So I think that that's it. It's never like any hard feelings towards these specific marketplaces per se. It's more of like just the way they move. Like just avoid some of these situations by just being really upfront and communicating with people. That's all.
No, I'm so in alignment with what you're saying, Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining the stage and sharing. I think that's one of the most important things is that communication and transparency and conversations like this one, but also asking those direct, hard questions. And it's not meant to, in any way come off as negative, but at the end of the day, like business is business. And I'm going to ask specific questions when representing artists and having conversations. So when a marketplace says to me, we have an email blast, my number one question is, okay, how many people are on that email blast? How many of those emails actually get opened? Like, share the data. And especially, again, if we're working as a team, we need to be on the same page and there has to be a lot of trust established. That's, I think, the number one thing that marketplaces need to keep in mind, where you're fostering that relationship, and artists are going to trust you more when you're sharing that information. I think artists are going to trust you more when these conversations are just transparent, like you mentioned. So I think you brought up a really great point, and I'm 100% for it. Paper Buddha, you've been waiting super patiently, so I'll swing you the mic.
Yeah, real quick, I think on the inventory thing, I made this comment last week, and I told somebody, look, man, business people aren't used to the inventory talking back, right? And the artists, we're the inventory for the platform. We're the thing that you sell as our art. So I think that we gotta first is game recognize game. I'm your inventory. You got to treat me as such. Like treat me well. But that aside, I actually wanted to make a comment as a collector. I have right around 9,000 NFTs that I've collected over the last 4 years or something. About 80% of them are generative art. I'm super fucking bullish on gen art. And I want to shout out FX Hash on Tezos and Art Blocks as platforms that are genre specific. And they've built really strong community around that genre of art. And I think that that's something we haven't really talked about. I really love both of those platforms because I don't get noise, right? I get signal. I get like, yo, we got this curated drop coming up from Lisa Orth. We know she's your favorite. We're gonna here's all the details that you need, how much to have in your wallet, when the shit's gonna go down. And there's a lot of really great communities like tender.art that have built up around these generative art platforms, right? We don't see that in other mixed platforms where they've just got everybody. Now, I'm not saying let's go start a collage platform because I don't think there's enough of collage artists and enough collage collectors, but something like generative art really lends itself to that. So maybe that's a thing that we platforms can look into. Really, I think Violet's comment spurred this in me is why don't we have more platforms that are really speaking to what we're interested in? Yo, let me just fill it out. Let me go to Super Rare and just fill it out. Dude, I like collage. I like gen art and I like punk rock shit. Show me that. Don't show me fucking 3D art. I'm part of the Artifacts project with Roger Dickerman. I got enough 3D art from every blue chip on the planet, right? I'm trying to look at other stuff. And I'll bring it back to Super Rare and their multi-curated feed model that never really hit, but was a fantastic idea. What if you could log into Super Rare and you could say, I want to see Paper Buddha's curated feed. I want to see Trevor Jones and Violet Jones's curated feed. I don't want to see the Super Rare main feed. I want to see Rob from Makerplace's feed, right? And now I've got a curated feed that when I log into Super Rare, that's what I see. If I would log into Netflix, maybe I want to see what Trevor's watching. I'm sick of looking at my kung fu movies. I want to see what Trevor's got going on. I don't want to see what Netflix recommends because fuck, that's horrible. The last thing I want to do is see what Netflix recommendation is, right? So I think if we start to look at things a little bit more like that, we could really do some damage as a team.
I love that take, and I'm with you. Sometimes I go onto my music platforms and look at what my friends are listening to, and it's way better than whatever Apple or Spotify might be suggesting to me at the time. So I'm with you on
Nickelback.
that. Yeah. Yeah, Nickelback. Yeah, Nickelback's greatest hits. That's what Trevor's always listening to. So I know if I need some Nickelback in my life, something I may have not even heard yet, I just look at Trevor's feed. But no, I think that's great. It's a lot of this has been about communication and about the product not talking back. But it's just so important. The artist and the collectors are lifeblood of this space. And Violet pointed to it earlier. She said, "Look, people were getting email blasts, and they weren't curated email blasts. They're blasts, and using that sense of the word." Not pinpointing down what any one particular person may be interested in. So having a simple questionnaire is something that I've never gotten. And it's just so surprising to me that it's taken this space for me to hear that honestly for the first time. Not to say I haven't gotten emails. Like I said, I've gotten tons of them, but none of them have been actually asking me for feedback or asking me what my interests are, what I do want to see, what I don't want to see. So paper, I love that take. I appreciate it. We've got more hands in the room. I've got some more time to give, so let's keep the convo going. Hernan was kind enough to pass the mic. He's Dominican too, so I'm surprised he didn't get love from Rob there as well. But
I heard that
Hernan,
actually.
come on, jump in. We got Rachel after you.
I've got to run, guys. But I'm actually going to be practicing my Dominican dad pose. That's for Hernan and Rob. This little inside joke there. But it's
I
been lots
love
of.
you, Trevor. You're Dominican by association. Don't worry.
Absolutely.
That was funny. That made me laugh. But I got to run, guys. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to all of you. It's been really interesting, and hopefully have another one like this soon. But all the best. Love you guys lots.
Love you, Trev. Take care.
Love you, Trev.
Dominican dad. I want to see that pose, Trevor. But thank you for joining. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, it's definitely a meme, so it's hilarious, and Trevor nailed it. That was definitely something to laugh about. But look, I think this is a great conversation. I think that a lot of very good points were made. I really want to harp on and focus still the main question at hand, which is what is the marketplace's role? I think one of the main themes to talk about, right, is what Rachel hit upon. It's sustainability, and I would like to add to that growth. And I think those two things are of preeminent importance for all of the marketplaces here. My opinion is that the role of the marketplace should be one such that marketplaces should be thought leaders and should be the ones leading the space forward in such a way where they're a reputable source of information and helping to educate and enlighten others who may enter the space without minimal knowledge or zero knowledge or some kind of knowledge, and they can provide a certain level of enlightenment to these people and help guide them, help guide their choices, help guide potentially, what great art may be or what it could look like, or provide certain factors that they can use to consider how to go about making their their next art purchase. And in my opinion, I do believe that Makerspace is doing that, and I believe that they're at this point right now, finally, in my opinion, doing it well in a way that is wholesome and considerate and in a 360-degree aspect. From, if you look at the experience of the people who are working there, and not as a detriment to Maker's Place, but I think that one of the things about Maker's Place is that they don't talk about this. We don't talk about this, and I don't know if it's a matter of being humble or a matter of we're too busy trying to promote artists and other programming that we're doing. But if you look at the experience of the people who work at Maker's Place, it's a super professional group, highly experienced. If you look at me, Jared, and Aisha, where people who have been here since 2019, me from a mainly collector's perspective, Jared and Aisha from an artist perspective mainly, but also as collectors who have a rich understanding of the history and the development of this space and how the market fluctuations have taken place and the changing and shifting narratives. And then you look at other co-workers of ours like Caitlin and Kat, who have a combined 15-20 years experience of working at Sotheby's, a major traditional art house. And then you look at Jessica, all of us curators, who has over 10 years of experience with top galleries, including Pace and others. So that's something that we don't necessarily do a good job to emphasize and let others know that, like, hey, we're experienced, we're working hard, and we're working hard on your behalf to sustainably build our space. I think that marketplaces are builders in much the same way that artists are builders, in much the same way that collectors are builders, in much the same way that patrons are builders. And I think that, we're working hard. We're working really hard on all fronts. And I think, especially at Maker's Place, I know individually, me, I've taken calls at midnight from artists. I've taken calls at 1 a.m. from clients. I definitely don't talk about that, but that is for sure a fact. And they're, like the other thing that I've done is I've left dates for 45 minutes at a time to take a call from an artist client, because the experience that we want to provide to the best possible way we can is one of a top-notch experience. And so again, right, we're all builders here. I think we're working hard. We need patrons, we need artists, collectors to help support sometimes marketplaces in such a way where potentially they're not necessarily buying and collecting, but maybe they're helping to offset costs for things that marketplaces really want to do, but in times like these are cash strapped. And that's one of the things that Maker's Place just did with the current art residency that's ongoing. We teamed up with Blondie in order to be able to make that happen, because right now, we couldn't exactly fully on our own accord, given the shrinking of the market, be able to make that happen. So that's important. And by the same token, artists who necessarily don't need a distribution channel or their own marketplace, simply because they've made it and they've been able to sort of escape that, right? They're in the upper echelon, or however it is you may want to describe it. They've done a great job to be able to curate their collectors and their own distribution channel, in much the same way that patrons and collectors and others team up, galleries as well, team up with marketplaces. Artists can also do that, knowing that potentially, while they could do it on their own, it may benefit and help others in the marketplace to be able to just kind of increase collectors, because in the end, that's also going to help other artists. So I think that that's really important too, for all of us to figure out how to best collaborate, even though at times we can do it on our own, how to best collaborate so that we can continuously win and help others win who are either below us or next to us or also want to grow. We're trying to build the space. We're trying to increase the number of people who are here collecting. We're also trying to build artist careers. And I think that that's really important as a marketplace, in order for there to be a sustainable, wholesome growth that leads us into the future. So I think all of those points are important to consider, and I think Maker's Place is doing it well.
Somebody's going for a raise. Did you just put in your application for a raise with Maker's Place
Yo,
this
holla
morning,
back.
Hernan?
Listen. Send them a form. Let them know. Hey, listen, this guy needs a raise ASAP.
Now you threw a lot
Clip
of
the
props in
audio.
on.
Clip this audio.
Who's recording? Is this recorded?
Well, it's definitely recorded, so we got you
Let's
covered,
go.
man. Yeah, we might sell you this recording for a small fee. No, but I think you had my main takeaway was there was the collaboration. I think that's been
Right.
repeated by a few of the guests on stage today, and it goes a long way. It's like lines of communication. Jennifer touched on that, like simple lines of communication that they seem simple at face value, but they're oftentimes not being done. And so to have this communication line between, as you mentioned, the patrons, the collectors, the artists, and collaborating in a lot of cases to make things happen like that residency you talked about are huge, and we all win together, right? Like Vasia had this on our notes earlier. I thought it was a great point to touch on, is that we're still too small to be competitive at this point. So I think it's really important that we do collaborate, that we rally around one another. These conversations here are important to bring to light some conversations that need to be had between all those parties. So I hope a lot more marketplaces in particular will start reaching out to more collectors. I've mentioned it before, but I would like to be reached out to as far as what I want to see. Like Paper Buddha mentioned, like let's curate my feed and let's get some feeds from people that are in this room right now that are tastemakers that have massive collections. I didn't know Paper Buddha's collection was that big. I didn't even know he was
It's
into gen
fucking
art.
huge. It's
I'd
huge,
like
dog.
to
It's
see
fucking.
it.
It's mine's bigger than yours.
I'd like to see it. I'd love to see your feed. I think that's an excellent idea. So I hope there's some takeaways if marketplaces are listening that we could try to integrate here. In the meantime, I wanted to go to Rachel. Let's keep this conversation going. It's a great one. Rachel, you've had your hand raised. Go ahead.
But Vasia, I think, has her hand raised.
Oh my God, you're so sweet, Rachel. 2 seconds. I'll swing it right to you. I just wanted to touch on what Hernan was saying. First of all, dude, you made her wait 45 minutes. Damn, bro. I hope you made it up to her. That's all I'm gonna say. Um, and I just want to clarify for everyone listening, this podcast is not sponsored by Maker's Place in any way. That said, you did mention and you talked a lot about the team and the different people on the Maker's Place team and the roles that they play. And to be honest with you, personal experience I'll share with everyone. Like I had an extremely bad experience with Maker's Place early on in the game, and it was like I'm a one and done kind of person. So I honestly never worked with them after that experience back in 2021. And the only reason I'm in conversations with them now is because of the team and because I see how you guys move. I really, on a personal level, just like how you guys represent yourself. Rob, obviously joining the team now as well means a lot. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to seeing how marketplaces pivot and the kind of learning as we go. The only thing I'm going to mention is again, like those hard facts that I think are necessary for the conversations. I know you're trying to get that raised, but to try to get me some of the data too. I think that's important, the transparency in those conversations, because I think it is again kind of working with the team and being able to collaborate and grow together. So that was just my 2 cents. Rachel, thank you so much for being polite and handing me the mic, but I'll give it right back to you. Thank you.
What? Oh my goodness, this is your space, and I absolutely enjoy every single one of you and Milton's spaces here of like really deep diving into these conversations and having a really amazing open conversation. I've always felt that it's been a hodgepodge of diverse thoughts, and I really appreciate you both creating the safe space. Here's a conversation that I would love to have. I don't want to dwell on it, but let's just throw Maker's Place under the bus at the moment because we're bringing it up. One is Hernan. I've seen you post about like mentors, and we've touched upon like teams and like help and like other tools for artists in this space. And of course, I am like a huge what do you fangirl of like I would love a mentor in this space, and I know lots of artists in this space would love mentors. And we kind of turn to marketplaces to kind of help us guide us into what they're looking for and what we can do to fit what they're looking for and stuff like that. I know Rob had just done a huge, uh, call for like the private sales, I think, of the concierge of Maker's Place. And I know a lot of my friends did. I know I made like a full like 10-page PDF presentation that I sent in. Most of us did not get in. We just got, the email of like, oh, sorry, we're full, we can't, do whatever. But I do want to say that obviously you guys have like a huge influx of people, and obviously concierge means, curation and stuff. But I think a great conversation that can be had would be, okay, so if artists felt comfortable coming up to you guys, and if you guys were able to be receptive to it, just like getting feedback onto what exactly you were looking for and how artists can better prepare and present the next time these opportunities happen. That for me would be like really amazing. And I know it's like really vulnerable as an artist to be like, oh, I don't want feedback. Like they just don't like my work. It's not that. And I understand that from one level. But I know a lot of artists still need to have something more than just like not now. They need to have some sort of like, okay, these are the points that you can work on. These are kind of ways that you can, think about working on your career before we would consider you or we would take you on. And not specifically market Maker's Place,
Yeah,
but like,
yeah, that's
that.
a really good point, Rachel. For just to answer them super quickly, right now the private sales, the private commissions, those are open, but it's on a select basis because it's a new program. It's just starting out. So it's not open to everyone, and I'm not sure if it'll open to everyone just because of the resources that we have. We're a pretty small team, so we should probably put out what the factors are to being considered in that program. I think that is a good point and a good idea, but that's also on others to decide and not necessarily me. So that's definitely great feedback. Rob and I will probably take back to the team. I think the other point that I want to make is to address the mentorship program. That's something that I'm doing in my individual capacity, because I absolutely believe that, as someone who's in the space, sees what's going on, understands what's going on, and fully transparently loves and admires this space and what everyone is doing here, I believe that mentorship is needed. And I think that many, if not all of us, can benefit from mentorship. So that's something that I'm doing on an individual level outside of Maker's Place, in using my own time. So that's not Maker's Place related. That's just sort of me trying to, just make the space better for us. So hopefully that sort of answers all of your questions. And yeah, look, we're open for feedback. Rob and I can definitely get your feedback to the team. But also, keep in mind that we are a small team, and we do have a lot of work because there's always a lot of stuff going on. But, a lot of us here, just fully love, breathe, and enjoy being in this space and go the extra mile, aside from the extra work that we're doing in our own individual capacities, just because we love the space so much.
No, absolutely, and I didn't mean to come across as any sort of offense. It was just
No,
my
that was not offensive. Absolutely not.
You did for me. You did for me, Rachel.
That's
I'm just
okay.
mess.
Rob can
I'm
be.
sending you hearts,
That's
Rob.
okay. I'll give
You
you a hug, Rob. I'll give you one of those nice Dominican hugs. You'll be all right.
Rachel's a sweetheart, by the way. I mean, even just the
Yeah,
way she speaks as if she's sneaking into the room, but she doesn't want to let everyone know that she's there. She's
right.
just going to be very quiet about it. But she's absolutely amazing. Rachel, you are awesome. I mean, anything you need from us at Maker's Place, feel free to reach out to me or Hernan. I mean, come
Right.
on now. You don't have to sneak into the room to work with us or to talk to us, all right?
Right. I see you, Rachel. You
We
can't sneak
Oh
in.
my gosh.
we see you.
Okay, I want to sneak on out, but I wanted to just send love to both of you guys. I think you guys are amazing, and it is a really big point of trust that you guys have joined the team at Maker's Place. Kind of like Vasia, I was kind of had put Maker's Place on the trash can, or in the trash bin. Yeah, in the trash bin. Sorry, that's how it goes.
Rude.
But no, now that you guys are on the team, it has definitely turned my head, and I'm going back into the trash bin, and I'm pulling it out, and I'm seeing something nice and shiny. So
You
that's
better clean
wonderful.
us up.
Are you
You
going to
guys are
Art
doing a great
Basel?
job of that.
Rachel, are you doing Art Basel?
I really wish I could, but I don't have a sponsor to get me over there, and I will actually be on expedition deep in the
Ah,
jungle
okay.
the week before. So I will probably be very rough looking if I were to make it. But I
Well,
hope you guys have a great time.
I just got a message from, Fidel about hosting his brunch. I know we did the one in Paris, so I thought of you. But if you decide to change your mind, it looks like Fidel has a sponsor for Art Basel, so there's going to be a brunch there.
Absolutely, and I recommend everyone go because it's going to be freaking awesome.
Yes, it is. And
Yeah.
Paris was absolutely amazing for the brunch.
Okay. See, Legend Rob, just gave us the super cool medal or star button of honor. Anyways, can I just mention just one more thing before I shut up on this space? Okay. A totally random thought, but back to these marketplaces is, people are thinking about self sovereignty, manifold versus foundation versus all these other things. One point that I would like to just throw out there, because I've been talking about this a lot, is marketplaces need to be multi chain to become better distribution centers, but also better artist portfolios and also a better collector's experience. Not just having one chain or one blockchain or, eventually we want to get to the point where we don't want to know if it's ETH or Solana or Tez or Bitcoin. We just want to collect artwork. We want to make that very easy for people to understand that, okay, this is a piece of artwork, this is how much it is, and boom, done. I don't really like this whole idea of, Solana collectors are being shunned by ETH collectors, and like Bitcoin collectors are shunning, I don't like it as much, and I think it's not conducive to a more sustainable and growth and diverse and loving art filled world that we want. Also, just lastly, super quick, I don't know if anyone saw the 2024 Art Basel survey that came out. I made a huge long post of it of like my insights into it, but one of the coolest aspects that I saw from it was that the number of people who spontaneously buy artwork dropped from 10% of high value collectors to about 1%. And that's not just because less collectors are out there collecting, it's because collectors are actually looking more into the history, into the context, into not just, oh, this is a cool picture with like a pretty caption. They're actually being like, okay, why is this piece the way it is? Why should we pay this much for it? And that's what gets them to buy it. I think that's something that us artists should also take away from this survey, where okay, on marketplaces, on the timeline, on social media, on our websites, we need to have not just the content of beautiful artwork, but we need to have the context. And marketplaces that give us the tools and give us the ability to add that context to our art, I think are going to be far better of an experience for collectors and artists, and the greater Web3 experience going forward.
Yep, highly agree with that. I think with Maker's Place, again, because the team is so small, we're working on things. We're coming out with a new product for us, I think in the next week or so. But absolutely, I think multi-chain is the way to go. It just requires resources to build it and more engineers, and we all know how the market is. So, one thing at a time, we're getting there. I agree with you, and this is awesome feedback. Thanks so much, Rachel. We love you.
Stop shilling, HardArt.
I know, for real. Like, if this was a take a shot every time you hear Maker's Place, I'd be on the floor right now.
Well, I can't speak about the others. I don't know what they're doing in there.
Oh man. No, that being said or not, I'm glad you just responded to Rachel and mentioned that, because one of the things that is super easy to do is from the outside kind of judge or make assumptions or make some comments that honestly, like, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And like you mentioned, there's limited resources, limited bandwidth, and you have to prioritize certain things just to survive as a business. So I do want to point that out and shout out marketplaces, because it's not easy to keep your doors open to an extent. So the fact that we've seen a lot of people just kind of die down, unfortunately, and there's not that many left standing. So I just wanted to mention that, and what Rachel was mentioning about artists and websites and a couple different points she brought up kind of segues into the second question I had. I can't believe it's been almost 2 hours and that was only question number one. I'm not going to go into deep asking people their opinion, but something I wanted to mention, because I noticed it after going through all of the threads from last week and people's conversations that they were having online. I think one of the important themes that was brought up is the importance of artists just taking control. And the way that even Jennifer, actually, she mentioned the importance of transparency and how a lot of artists were rubbed the wrong way with Foundation's pivot because they felt blindsided. It felt like a huge change that wasn't really communicated in advance, and it kind of disrupted the trust in the relationship. So the way that I look at it is like, like a regular relationship. If one person in that relationship doesn't have as much control or independence, and they feel like they have to rely on the other person in the relationship, there's a lot of fear there. There's a lot of, it creates friction. And so I think a lot of the conversations, and it's even been touched upon in this space today. I know Paper Buddha, his website, like he was mentioning a couple of different things that he does personally. I think it goes back to really artists taking control of their own brand. I know artist management services has been mentioned a couple of times. Milton and I had a previous episode talking specifically on that, but it's essentially the importance of artists being able to build their own socials, of spearheading their own marketing campaigns, sales campaigns, and not having to rely on just a marketplace to kind of carry all the weight. I think that goes back to the expectations of marketplaces and what's realistic at this point. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's just a matter of artists feeling more secure because they have more control of their artwork and how things are being executed. So it was just something I wanted to mention. We don't have to deep dive further into it. Jennifer, and I know Catalina actually joined the stage. So, Catalina, I'm going to come to you very quickly. I hate picking the order for these. Paper Buddha threw his hand up, so I don't know if it's in response to what I just said. So, PB, if it is, feel free to jump in, and then we'll go around the room.
Yeah, I was just going to say, no one's ever going to tell your story as good as you are. Like, no platform will ever tell your artist story the way you can when you take control of it. Get off your, I'm speaking to myself, get off my lazy ass and write a blog and share shit about myself, because no one's going to do it better than I can. And certainly no one's going to take responsibility to go do it. So that's where owning your own media and like having your own website really comes in. Then all these platforms are just a value add, and you're not bitter if they don't perform.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think that's definitely the approach. And unfortunately, it unlocks the conversation of, limited bandwidth and artists needing a team. And I mean, we had a whole conversation about it on a previous space, but I'm with you. It's absolutely, you can't really, it's taking the ownership, and you can't really have trust that others are going to execute for you or to that extent. So thank you for that 2 cents and from your perspective as an artist. Jennifer, thank you for patiently waiting, and then we'll swing it to Catalina.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that also another thing that would be helpful is to have cross-mint integration, because I think we've touched on the idea of educating new collectors or people who are, crypto curious or who actually want to collect digital art for the first time. I think having the option or some type of an interface when you go on a marketplace where they could be educated about what a custodial wallet is and the option to use CrossMint with a debit and credit card, as well as, like how Rachel said, various different types of chains all as one experience, I think would really help. And it would be like a dual benefit, like it would serve to educate, but also onboard people and also inspire people to collect more art. I feel like it would reduce a friction point, and that would be maybe something to consider integrating into platforms that are currently not using CrossMint. I don't know how hard that is from a dev part. I'm just throwing it out there as an idea. The other thing that I really loved that Rachel said was the context of the story. And so, yeah, like I'm thinking to myself, like, why didn't I ever like use my website and put proper like provenance there of like everywhere that my art has been exhibited? I, have a connection with Atomic Form. They already have a product that's fantastic, where you can basically take an NFT and just continuously add any kind of history that's attached to that specific piece of art, whether it's, who it got sold to or where it got exhibited. And so it would be dope to see those things integrated into a website of like a marketplace, a pre-existing one, where you could have like actual context for the crypto art, not just the description and the image and the price. But then on the other side of that, I'm thinking to myself, like what Paper Buddha just said, that should just be on everybody's website to begin with. Like we should be doing these things and telling our stories, because if we do it, I have a funny feeling that that would then drive the marketplace to match that energy, right? Because it would be like, oh, but they're already doing it and they're already getting, the collectors having this like really full experience when they go onto their website. So we're going to have to match that. So I think, it's good feedback, like giving marketplaces these tidbits and information on how they can improve, but also we need to also take that and just do it ourselves at the same token, because it isn't smart to just put all your eggs in one basket for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Great way to put it. And not putting your eggs in one basket. I think that's a theme that comes up a lot. Catalina, I know you've been patiently waiting. Thank you so much for joining. GM, how are you?
I'm good. GM, everyone. It's GN for me. It's almost 9 p.m. here, but I'm very grateful and very thankful for letting me on the stage. Hi, lovely Vasia. Hi, HardArt. Rachel, Rob, Jennifer, Paper Buddha, Hernan. I'm so happy and I'm so blessed to be here with you guys, because here is something that I wanted to share just quickly, and I was waiting. I was actually, what is the word in English? I was about to wait even longer, so it's okay. It's absolutely fine for me. What's fascinating about this space is the fact that I started with Maker's Place. Hernan, you can add Maker's Place in every sentence. You comment on space. It's okay, because I started with Maker's Place, and this month, October, is my 6th anniversary. So basically, I started back in 2018, October, beginning of October, and I have to tell you guys that half the things that I've achieved is thanks to Maker Space. I haven't been very active the past few years because of the craze of other marketplaces and because I wanted to explore other options. But let me tell you that Maker's Place did help my journey and did a huge boost. They were literally holding my hand when I started on the platform. And I'm still grateful to this day. It's absolutely amazing. What bothers me the most about this space, and I think it's because of me as an artist who has no experience in marketing and management and PR and any type of social media stuff, is the fact that I was taught almost half my lifetime, I spent learning how to create art. And here I am trying to do 20, 40 different types of work just so I can promote and tell my story and sell my art. And this is why it's so crucial for us, for me, and for 6 years, when I think about it, I haven't really done much because without a team, it's all trials and errors. Let's try this one. Oh, someone was talking about that platform. Let's try that platform. Someone was talking about this contest or that opportunity or that collection or that, I forgot the word, it slipped my mind, the collaboration. It's crazy how we as an artist, all of us who are not established enough, who are still trying, who are just finding our way in this fast-paced environment, very highly volatile. It's just trials and errors. Let's try this one. If it sticks to the wall, great. But tomorrow it's not going to be trendy anymore. So every day it's like trying, for me personally, it was every year trying again and again and again. And it's, for some people, is exciting because it's a never-ending exploration and it's a long life learning journey. But for others, and I've felt this too, we don't always get profit off of our work and our skills and time and energy. Time is the most precious resource, and we're trying to utilize it, and yet we don't have sustainability. So what I really love about this discussion today is that we can see both sides, not just the top artists, but the rest of the artists. And I'm actually at the bottom. I do include myself there because I'm still developing, I'm still exploring, I'm still establishing myself as a brand, as an artist. And I truly believe that we need to find some middle ground between, yes, we need to put our work and explore and put ourselves out there, but we also need to have the tools, because we don't have the resources to build them. We might have the ideas, but without teams, without research, without skills, and especially like Maker's Place, they had experience, something that other platforms might not have, because they were the trend of the moment, but they couldn't exceed after a couple of years of period. Which means, and this is why I think it's a little bitter taste about Foundation. It is a business, and absolutely understand that. And as a business entity, they have to think about their future. What they probably should have done is think about the artist's perspective as well. And what they did was the short-term profit. And what about the long-term? Look what Maker's Place is doing. Like, it's still here. I started 2018. They were still developing the logo, their website, the UI. We were invited from a marketplace, another crypto blog post called Steemit. We were invited as a group of artists to explore and learn more and test Maker's Place. And look how far it's come since then. And for me, it's absolutely amazing. It's obviously ups and downs. It's okay. It's a market cycle. We all go through this, but I truly believe that for a long term, Maker's Place is actually doing the best out of all the platforms. And I'm a little uncertain about the future, but I'm also excited because these are the topics and discussions that are what we're doing right now is shaping what's going to happen tomorrow. And I'm so grateful to be here among you guys. And thank you for listening to my TED Talk. It was a little long run, but I hope it's beneficial. And I kind of thought of saying more, but I forgot. I was a little too excited. But yeah, thank you for letting me speak.
No, thank you for joining the stage. 2018, I actually didn't realize it was that early. Again, I just want to reiterate in case someone didn't hear it before, this podcast is not sponsored by Maker's Place, but I love that you guys are organically getting a lot of love. On that note, we are hitting the 2 hour-ish mark. I can't believe it's been that long, and I know Milton has to jump as well. So I do want to wrap up the space like we normally do. Actually, first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who jumped on stage, who contributed to the conversation. I appreciate it. I want to finish it off with some key takeaways. So essentially, instead of just having an open-ended conversation, just to summarize, and I guess a couple of maybe action items. First of all, I think what's really important to mention is the expectations of what a marketplace is, and perhaps we need to just kind of check ourselves and make sure that we're in alignment and we're on the same page. I think it's really important. Paper Buddha gave that analogy of the buckets. I really loved. It's understanding who you're working with and what exactly their role is. I think it's important for artists and marketplace to be in alignment, and it's not artist versus marketplace. It's a team and collaborative effort. I also think it's extremely important for artists to feel like they're getting their values worth. So obviously there's commission conversations. As long as there's trust and artists feel like they're getting what what that value is, I don't see there being any kind of issue in this transaction essentially. Another component that we kind of skimmed on kind of quick, but I do think it's important to just mention that it's important for artists to take ownership, that they need to be in control. Yes, that opens up the conversation of perhaps needing a team, but whether you're minting on other platforms, important to have your own contract, your own website, developing your own personal brand. And Paper Buddha also mentioned the importance of IRL events and how that can also grow an artist's brand. And just the last thing I want to close out this space by saying is, for everyone listening right now, it means that you're here because you're building towards the future. And it's important to have open communications. I know Jennifer mentioned the importance of transparency before. Important to have communication and dialogue like we're having today. I love these types of spaces where it just organically flows. And that's why we didn't want to cut the conversation short. But it's important to use this as a moment to learn from each other, to brainstorm, to grow. And more importantly, Milton mentioned it earlier on the space, we are still a team. Everyone here is a team. It's too early for competition. So it's a matter of just, again, keeping it positive, constructive criticism, and having these conversations and being able to grow from it. So that was my closing remark. I don't know if Milton, you want to finish us off with anything else, but again, I just want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in. We are here every Wednesday, 1 p.m., and these episodes are going to get uploaded to Spotify and other platforms soon because honestly, I think they're important to go back and listen to. A lot of the conversations, even today, we talked about the importance of artists needing a team. That's a whole conversation that we had in a previous episode. So we're just trying to create good dialogue, good conversations, having some awesome guests contribute to the conversations, and just archiving them for future references as well. So Milton, I'm out. I'm done. I'm tapped out. Any closing remarks?
No, I'm here. I appreciate everybody chiming in and jumping on stage today. Like, so much good feedback. I think the number one takeaway for me was communication. I think that's one of the big things that happened last week was probably lack of prior communication when a large change was made. And like Vasia said, we're still very small. It seems like when these private conversations happen and then we're all surprised with them, it's hits us from left field because it's like, wow, we could have had this conversation in public like we did the day after this foundation move. There was a fungible space and everybody was part of it. And that could have happened prior and saved a lot of wasted breath, in my opinion. So I think the feedback loop is super important here. There's so many good opinions and so many people, like Hernan said, that want to see this thrive even outside of the workplace environment. And when they're private time, they're looking to build this sometime out of their own pockets. We've seen this happen quite a bit. So I think the communication, the feedback loop is super important. So I want to keep that dialogue open and I don't want these surprises to happen unbeknownst to some of the key important players of our ecosystem, which are the artists, collectors, and the patrons. So I hope to see that take place in the future, even if there are big changes being made. I think we're a very understanding crowd, and getting our feedback is important. Whether or not these platforms implement it is up to them, but at least getting our opinions, I think, shows a lot of respect. So I hope to see that take place in the future. But with that being said, again, everybody, thank you for being here. We look forward to being with you next week. We'll find another spicy topic for everybody to chew on a little bit. Next week, we'll be with you Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we look to have another good crowd like you here today. Thanks for being with us, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Thanks for tuning into Moments the Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe and follow us to keep up with all the latest trending Web3 topics. Join us every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern on X for our live space and be a part of the dialogue.